dear Bagginses and Boffins.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you finish it? Okay. So honestly, I think it's interesting because I'm coming from a place of already hearing and trying to not see too many reactions to it, but I've already heard there is a lot of backlash to it. I think it's overblown, the backlash, to be honest. Like, it wasn't that bad. There are some things that I'm not happy with, but it's not as I don't know. I was basically expecting from the backlash like an almost like I don't know, like like a Tim Burton Alice in Wonderland looking thing. Like, that's sort of what I imagined when.
Right. It's not quite like that. No.
No, like, it's not completely over the top and like fantastical, like video game esque. Like you said, it does have that vibe in certain scenes,
Well,
but
when she's clinging to the wall, it looks like a video
when
game.
she's clinging to the wall, it looks like Assassin's Creed or something like that. I, I and so yeah.
Yeah, you could think it's a video game trailer. It's like, oh, they're just getting really good at these graphics now.
If you ever go back and watch what it was like Halo 4, I
Mhm.
swear that trailer is live action.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is. I think it's not. I think it's just really good CGI, but they can do some really good stuff. Especially if you're
For a
going to do it
trailer,
for a trailer,
especially.
yeah, for like 1 minute, you can get some really good effects going. But yeah, so there is some interesting things that I did pick up on here. And so yeah, I think it's a little bit overblown. People are maybe reacting too much to a minute long of visuals, and
When they're freaking out about dwarf ladies not having beards, that's the one thing I couldn't avoid. I saw that everywhere.
yeah, me too. Me too. And we can get. I mean, do we want to do that first? Like, there's a couple things to talk about, and that's a part of it, but it's also like its own subject versus.
Maybe she shaved. Maybe it'll explain it.
So yeah, maybe she's trying to blend into like a human elf like council or something, and
Yeah, maybe it's like humans and elves have set the standard of beauty, like
Yeah.
they like Hollywood did for us.
Exactly.
Like everyone tries to look like Kim Kardashian now.
Oh
So
yeah, exactly.
so the elves are the dwarfs are shaving to look like human and elf women. That maybe that's what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I can see there being some explanations. I don't think that they're going to use that. I think they simply just have that look for the characters to bring in maybe a wider audience. Do you want to yeah, let's do the dwarf stuff first, and then we can touch on some of this trailer stuff. Let me pull this person up. Wow, it's funny. You Google search Lord of the Rings dwarf, and that's not even there. It is. It's like you have to scroll down a little bit to find that one. Do you want me to send you a link for this, or?
Yep.
Okay. Wow, that link came out really bad. It's just a Google
okay.
link to the
We got
to
it.
it. Yeah. Yeah. So she's like 4 rows down. Because to me, I'm actually less concerned about this. Is gonna, like, I don't know, maybe like make some people mad. I am less concerned about the beard. Like you said, there's some explanations that you could offer, but also if Lord of the Rings is simply if they're gonna simply base it on the movie canon and not go to book canon, I don't believe, other than that conversation that Gimli has briefly about there being some sort of misconceptions about dwarf women. Other than that moment where he's joking about them springing up out of holes in the ground and this kind of stuff, I don't think they talk about it too much. So in movie canon, if you just go by the original trilogy, I don't think it's ever clearly established that they have beards. So I'm less concerned about the beards, although I will say, based on everything I've seen from other material, they probably should have beards. What I'm more concerned about, and this is something that I was worried about from watching The Wheel of Time, something I wanted to talk to you about whenever you got a chance to see it, but it's the costume design. There seems to be a lot less attention paid to detail in costume design than when Peter Jackson did his trilogy. Because if you look, like, if you're on Google here, just look at all these other dwarfs or dwarves, and look at their armor, their helmet, their clothing. The designs are these geometric like they are clearly not elf designs, and they're clearly not human designs from what we know about those races in Middle Earth. And they are they have their own very unique, like, you can pick out a dwarf helmet versus a elf helmet. Here I cannot. I cannot look at this dwarf woman.
It's not clear that she's a dwarf. Yeah.
It's not clear. And that to me is the problem, and it's the problem in Wheel of Time too. Everything is just way too uniform and clean, and it doesn't look like this was made by a fantasy race. This looks like it was just made for some generic, like, Forever 21 clothing line. Like, it, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it just doesn't have anything. Like, look at Gimli's helmet. That's such an iconic helmet, and it's such a simple idea. And yet,
I know, and you just need to, like, go to the Warhammer people. They'll design this up for you.
exactly. I mean, imagine if instead of this weird triangle pattern, imagine if she had what's wrapped around the band of Gimli's helmet. Imagine if that geometric pattern was around her neck or something like that.
Yeah.
Instantly
And that would
better
be
to
more
me.
clear and more of, like, an earthen tone.
And more of an earthen tone, exactly. Like, you look at these dwarves, I know they like gold and stuff, but if you look at their actual outfits, they're not wearing gold.
Yeah.
And the fact that her clothing, she's wearing like a shawl or something that just drapes over her. There is none of that in any other Lord of the Rings look. They're all, like, even the ones that are in The Hobbit, all of their clothing is fitted a little
Maybe
bit better.
she's some kind of priestess or something. I don't know. Like,
Yeah,
there's a
so
reason.
if you Google search it, it comes up as like dwarf queen or something like that.
Oh dear.
You're right. Maybe she's a princess. Maybe she's a queen. I'm not really sure. But to me, it's just that clothing. Like you said, it's not clear that this is a dwarf. I still don't even know if that's a dwarf. We're told it's a dwarf by some people online. But it's not clear to me that this is a dwarf. And so that the beard alone, like, the beard would instantly make it recognizable to any Lord of the Rings fan that that's a dwarf. But not all dwarves have beards, and not all elves don't have beards. So there are some overlaps there that that people can talk about and look into Tolkien's his own books to find examples of this. But aside from that, it's just this overall design, and this is a problem for all of those posters they released. I cannot tell who's human and who's elf in those posters. You should be, if you look
That's
at
true.
Elrond versus Boromir versus Faramir versus anyone from the Rohirrim, you can tell instantly. And I know that we've seen these movies a lot, so there is some of that mental imagery that we are imparting onto it that we know about. But if you look at these things, like, just Google Elrond and look at his armor, instantly that looks like elf armor. Right? I'm not, like...
Yeah, and you look at Galadriel's armor, like, kind of looks like Gondor a little bit.
It kind of looks like Gondor armor, which you can say, well, hey, Gondor's armor is kind of based on old elvish armor. But the thing is, unless you establish something in these movies to do this, it's going to look like this kind of bland. Everyone is on the same mindset of how things are supposed to look. Every race has the same understanding of armor, the same understanding of weapon. Like that's not the case in these books and in these movies. Like these things, these races have different values that they bring to their armor and to their clothing, and you need to let these races show that off, because that's part of what gives the world it does make it fills it out. It makes it feel like you can go to Gondor and feel like you're in a different city than in Hobbiton. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you need to be able to feel like when we go to different places. This is my problem with Wheel of Time. I never know where we are in Wheel of Time because everyone looks the same. Every city looks the same. Nobody seems to even like recognize each other's differences, and it brings it to like this whole like I can't even tell who's who. And this is a sort of a problem with the Hobbit when all the dwarves, because they're all dwarves, they all have that same aesthetic. It's hard to tell them apart. But when you have everyone who's different races wearing the same aesthetic, and now I don't even know what the heck's going on. So to me, I mean, look at the clothing. If you look at I'm looking at these images of Elrond here, the clothing of him looks way better than that dwarf princess clothing. Like it fits him better. I know he's an elf and she's a dwarf, but like, why can't her clothing represent her the way his clothing represents him?
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. It just, to me, it's and look at any of the movie posters, like you said, Galadriel, but even some of the other ones. I mean, look at like how many other? There's like 20 of them. Yeah, okay. I pulled them up here. Other than the villains, it is unclear what these beings are. Oh, and then you can clearly tell Rohan because they have a horse hilt on their sword. But without that, nothing.
Yeah.
And I guess you can kind of tell what is supposed to be a hobbit because they're holding acorns and they have like kind of looser fitting clothing. But imagine if you will, if you zoom in on the dwarf princess and had her holding acorns with that kind of shawl, you wouldn't know that that's a dwarf princess. Like, it just, to me, these posters are like, in fact, you zoom in on one of them. I think this is it. I'm going to send it to you. I think this is the dwarf princess poster. Copy link. There we go. I think this is the poster for the dwarf that we're talking about here. Right there. Let me know if you think the same. I think this is supposed to be the dwarf princess.
In the middle there.
Just based on the triangle
Yep.
ornaments, which again, I get triangle, they're trying to go for something there, but there's already a pre-established dwarf aesthetic that is not just triangles. They do all sorts of geometric patterns that are interlocking to show the strength of stone and that kind of. So like, to me, there's just a problem with these posters as well, where they haven't quite got the aesthetic right. Like, these clothing, they're way too clean, and it feels like someone made this for like for a costume, and it's not clothing. Whereas if you go back and look at Lord of the Rings and look at what Elijah Wood is wearing, you look at what Aragorn's wearing, like, they look like they're wearing clothing. I don't know. Like, to me, there's something off with even these poster clothing images. So I don't know. That was my one thing that I was recognizing before we even saw the trailer, was that there's something just off about the uniformity and the cleanliness of all of it. It's just too streamlined.
I regret to announce this is the end. I bid you all a very fond farewell.